So now that we've found two flags, we've also been able to set ourselves up as a default user. The next phase and the final phase that we'll be moving into is actually trying to get ourselves from a normal user to be the root or admin for this particular machine. So in order to do that, we have now opened up a remote access or a shell to the system. And from this shell, we want to then escalate our privilege. And to do so, we're going to need to find a vulnerability in order to help us achieve this. So one of the vulnerabilities that is available to us is by using an application which we've already been familiar with in Pali, is using Nmap. So by using Nmap, we can actually exploit a flaw that will allow us to temporarily gain root access. So that's what we're going to do next. So I'm going to switch back to the terminal. So before I do anything else here, I'm going to change the mode of the terminal, and I'm going to change it to extern. So to change the terminal mode, I am using the command export term equals extern. And by using this very simple statement, I press enter here, I can now use the command clear. Okay, so all I've done is change the terminal mode, and the terminal being the actual shell that we're using. I'm changing the mode, and by changing it to extern, I'm able now to use clear and some of the more traditional bash commands. The next thing is we want to find out the version of Nmap that we're currently using on the Mr. Robot virtual machine. So if I type in Nmap and then version, and we can see that it's using the version 3.81. I would then move to a browser and start to investigate various exploits that are available for this particular command or application, depending on how you view Nmap. So there are a couple of exploits that can be used here, and this is all freely and widely available online. So the one I'm going to use is exploit number 2, and by using these commands, I'm going to be able to open up a bash shell through Nmap, which will actually give us root access. Okay, so that's the aim here. So if I switch back to my virtual machine, so what I'm going to do here is, if I do who am I, what I can see is that I am robot. That's the user I am at the moment. And what I want to do is change this so that by the end, I'll actually be the root of or admin for this machine. So I'm going to do nmap -- interactive. And this means basically I'm not using nmap any longer as a command line instruction within the shell. I'm actually going to be using it as an actual application. And here we are. We're now inside Nmap itself. So all the commands here are specific to Nmap. If I was to do -bash, then that gives me the traditional bash shell. but this is actually running through. This is actually running through the Nmap application. If I do ID, you can see that currently I am robot as a user, and I'm in the robot group. Okay, and then if I exit, I don't exit back to the normal shell, but I do exit back into the Nmap application. Okay, so I'm going to use Nmap to get temporary root, and to do that, I'm going to do the !sh command, and by doing so, I now have access again to a terminal, and I can now start to be or become a root user. Okay, so first of all, if I do mi here, it tells you that I am now root. So I'm now the root user, just by using the -sh in Nmap. I've suddenly gone from being the robot user to root user. And as such, anything I type here in this terminal will be done as root. So if I do ls, I still got access to the directories. I can also now access the root folder, which I couldn't get access to before as a typical user. I can now get access to because I am root. And I'll show you later on that this folder is actually locked to a typical user, that by actually using this vulnerability, I'm now accessing an area of the operating system I wouldn't be able to get to normally. And there you go. I am now showing the files within the root folder. And you'll see here that I now have a file, the last flag as a text file is now visible here. And because I am still working or using, being identified as root, I can now cat the text file that's in the root folder of the Mr. Robot VM. And here we go. I can now get the last flag. Okay, so by using a configuration for a vulnerability within Nmap, I've now been able to temporarily get root access, and therefore to perform some commands as a root user or admin on this particular VM. So we've now got through this the final flag. If I exit this, you can see that according to Nmap, I'm still root. And then if I exit from Nmap, and if I down to who am I here, I'm back to being the default user robot. If I try to access the root folder as I did before, it's going to tell me that unfortunately I haven't got permission as robot. However, by using Nmap, I was able to get permission, and that was how I was able to get the final flag. And there we go. We've now captured all three flags of this particular system. So that is how you can actually use a variety of hacking techniques to actually gain access to a machine by exploiting flaws in WordPress or exploiting flaws within other applications within this system. We've been able to get from knowing nothing about this machine to being able to find admin password for WordPress, and then by using that being able to then change the files connected to a website, which then has allowed us to get a reverse shell, which has then allowed us eventually to gain backdoor access to the server and got onto it as a user, and then escalate our privilege right up the way to root. Okay, so hopefully you've learned something from this videos. Any problems, any issues, please get in touch.